Music greats and music aficionados. Thank you for stopping by for a quick listen to the Music on the Open Road podcast, the podcast that is all about human rights in music today. This is episode 2 of season 1, entitled Neighborhood Records. I'm your presenter, your host, Corinne Sullivan. I launched Article 27 Music, LLC, back in 2019 from my home in Oregon, with the hope of assisting professionals being played in music. It's not a particular profession in the music industry that needs doctoring. It's a mindset. Too many people have stolen profits from songwriters and performances. The mindset exists that it's okay to be elusive or evasive to these artists when it comes to the protection of the moral and material interests of their musical works. But when we speak of protection, we speak of an almost godlike human right, cast in stone. Today, there still remains a dearth of protection of human rights. Is it another record label that's at fault, taking more than they should? You have asked me from time to time. No, the answer is no. It's not the record labels. Hi guys. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of today's episode, Neighborhood Records, let's talk about human right number 27. That's what is inspiring Article 27 Music. It's a statement of one of the 30 universal human rights. It was written down in 1945, ratified in 1948, as one of the human rights that should be protected by the United Nations. All of those human rights are in a single document called the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So Article 27 of the UDHR says, Part 1, everyone has the right, freely, to participate in the cultural life of the community, to enjoy the arts, and to share in scientific advancement and its benefits. Think about that in terms of performances in today's music. That human right says so much. The right freely to participate in the cultural life of the community. The protection of your right of cultural participation is a universal human right, and it's the human right of everyone in the community. Now, today it feels fairly free and fair, but remember things like turn of the century, 20s, 30s, 40s. There was a time when jazz was banned, and then look at what Elvis went through when he ushered in a new era in music and dance. But it enters in business today where you have restrictions and contracts that can't be disputed after, the proverbial show gets on the road, restricting what an artist is and isn't allowed to say or perform from the stage, or any restriction really from a money crusty honey or his representatives. And you get these big artistic showdowns, and they force the labels into having these wild conversations with the artists. And it's all arbitrary. So what's the point of agreement? It could be part 1 of human right number 27. And that's really where we need to ask ourselves, what is more important? Is it to control and dominate a human being's right to participate in the cultural life of the community? Or is it to flip it around and in the other way, on the other flow, protect that human right and omit all of that from any business dealings with an artist? Because it's not curtailing free speech, is it? Oh yeah, you bet it is. Stopping cultural participation. The right to participate is a human right. I'm thinking protecting Human Right 27 is so important because it helps more than it harms. And when you ignore that, it's like vicious to treat another person that way. Part 2 of Human Right 27 says this: everyone has the right to the protection of the moral and material interests resulting from any scientific, literary, or artistic production of which he or she is the author. Now, this message gives hope, and it's what has inspired my work since 2019 until today. Violation of Part 2 is mainly what mainstream songwriter and multi-platinum recording artist Melanie has dealt with. And I had to dig and find the answers. What happened to Melanie's song? A big part of the puzzle came together understanding Melanie's record label that she launched in 1971, Neighborhood Records. Neighborhood Records! The name of the record label and music production company, founded by Melanie Safka in 1971. Melanie, running her own record label, signed and developed about half a dozen acts. Hello, somebody. Together, she and her husband Peter produced 5 stunning Melanie records. They also released the self-titled $5 Shoes, which was a very successful glam rock experiment of 1972. They developed a sensational folk duo called Janie and Dennis, and they recorded the group's full-length studio album, but it wasn't released. Janie and Dennis experienced success. They opened for the Bee Gees during a multi-location Canadian tour in the early 1970s. The Neighborhood Records was a straight shot to the top. Within a month or two of the dust settling on Melanie's contract with her former record label, Buddha, Melanie and Peter were at the helm of Neighborhood Records. So Peter was a genius, and he had organized a distribution contract in order to fulfill their dream of running and managing Melanie's music and other artists and having full control artistically. So as part of that distribution contract, the Shakaricks were given offices in the Gulf and Western Building, which was a smoking hot spot in New York, right next to Central Park. The first album is an exploration into the world of free reign. Melanie is no longer being controlled inside the studio by any outsiders at the record label. And by the end of the year, 1971, Peter and Melanie have recorded and released Gather Me, featuring her biggest hit, Brand New Key. The single and the album both released towards the end of the year, and by December of 1971, Brand New Key is a Billboard #1. So Neighborhood Records releases Brand New Key as a single, and on the flip side, side B, it's Melanie's hauntingly simplistic quest for decent behavior. Some Say. Some Say is a real fan favorite. Personally, for me, this piece is a masterpiece. It was even recently re-recorded by Morrissey on his last album. So I am pushing play now for you to hear a unique performance of Some Say. This is an alternate to the studio version, and this is coming from the archives. It was produced by Peter Shakarick, and it's never been played in public before. So here is Some Say, I Got Devil.
Some say I got devil. Some say I got angel. Well, I'm just a girl in trouble. I don't think I'm in danger. Don't think I'm in danger. No, I know I'm not in danger. Some have tried to sell me all kinds of things to save me from hurting like a woman and crying like a baby, something like a woman crying like a baby. And all the things that I have seen qualify me for a part in your dream, qualify me for this dream. And though I'd like to tell it exactly how I feel it, well, somehow the music just hides it and conceals it, hides it and conceals it all. It hides. And all the things that I have been can be hidden in a part of my dream, gonna hide it from my dream. Some say I got devil. Some say I got angel. But I'm just a girl in trouble. I don't think I'm in danger. Don't think I'm in danger. No, I know I'm not in danger. Yeah, I know. Get it right.
Oh my goodness, I love that song. 1969, Woodstock. Melanie performs on Friday night, August 15th, 1969, on the stage at Yasgur's farm. It's 11 p.m. Her set list is 7 songs. 6 songs are her own compositions, Close to It All, Mama Mama, Beautiful People, Animal Crackers, Tuning My Guitar, and Birthday of the Sun. For gigging that night, Melanie and Peter received a nominal paycheck. I can't tell you how much money was generated from the festival's ticket sales in total, but I am 44, and since about, I guess it was 1994, with the big 25-year reunion of Woodstock, the amount of promotional deals I've personally experienced since then, going into bookstores, record stores, Barnes & Noble, Tower Records, all touting for the sale of the original Woodstock collections, tops all items I have personally seen on sale in record stores. Even when all that promotion was being done for Woodstock 50th, so many sales of the compilation of those performances. But you never get the sales stats talked about too loudly. They normally tout #1 album sales as things like the Beatles. These are all part of what I believe to be a cover-up of monster earnings that have been directed away from the rightful owners, the original performers at Woodstock. Maybe not the owners of the recordings, but the very owners of the sound themselves. I was working directly with Melanie in 2019 during the Woodstock 50th excitement, and in 2020 I spoke to Michael Lang on the phone, and I also did meet him in person at Woodstock 50. He was very friendly, very kind, very caring, sympathetic. But in the months leading up to Woodstock 50, Melanie had talked about how Peter had tried to get a straight contract with him a long time ago and at different points over the years. It was always one of those things that seemed to, I don't know, fall between the cracks. Think about the Woodstock compilations and the follow-up sales and marketing campaigns, and that Melanie has not received a single paycheck for all of those sales, all of that distribution. And she's one of many performances from that night that have been treated in the same way. This is mind-inspiring to me because with digital downloads of single songs from 1998 to 2018, 20 years, if I was lowballing international sales of Woodstock and Woodstock artists, people like Googling Woodstock artists or pulling that up on lists of songs to purchase from Apple Music, it has to be at least, just lowballing it, like 17 million customers. And you multiply that by her 6 original pieces. Songs she wrote, she arranged, she wrote the music for, and she did the performance of. No compensation for that at all. Not one check paid to her. And honestly, to the majority of the additional acts. Apparently, Melanie asserted that there was never a contract negotiated concerning the sale of the recordings. And like I said, it just sort of, evaporated. So then the law of copyright ownership would apply. But instead, sales of music by these artists have continued without fair recompense. And this is like why I'm so just boggled, because I love music and I'm like, I need to at least say something. I need to do something at this time with the Music Modernization Act going into place and changes on just, with the streaming being just sort of like ignored or glossed over as to what that means, like on the actual spreadsheets. As a fan of music and someone who wants to, do anything I can to help the arts, I thought this is the time to speak, because if our legal system in place allows industry and big money to sweep the parts of the contract under the rug where the majority of the 33 Woodstock performers just don't get paid, anything on the sales of their recorded performances, and it's so out there and we're all participating, what do you say? I mean, this is the single most important peace demonstration in America's history. 3 or 4 days long, all about peace, ending war, and not a single act of violence the entire time from 500,000 people. And it's the artists on the stage that brought about that complacency or that, harmony that was existing at that time. So if their artist contract were aired or unconstitutional, why can't the creator of that piece, the performer, insist on it being remedied, and without losing his or her shirt in attorney fees or risking some sort of like social blacklisting because they say, hey, I want to be fairly treated in the business arena concerning my performance at Woodstock? Why? Pooh. I mean, then they say like, well, why did you sign it? Or why didn't you solve this on the 19th of August, 1969? Okay. Anyone out there, how many times have you factually been defrauded? Fraud is brutal. You buy a house. It's not your actual home. You found out 6 months later. You buy a new car. It's breaking down. Turns out it was driven. You're given mood-altering drugs or some sort of medicine, get your family on them. Turns out they were not tested really in any scientific or regular way. Fraud. The police aren't in the business of getting a phone call and providing fraud protection. But in the course of the United States becoming what we are today, the general population in dealing with various professions has to sort out these problems of inadequate protections so that there are ample legal protections to prevent human rights abuses. Okay, so like today, who does this complaint I've got about the non-payment to Melanie and Peter of her Woodstock performance actually go to? It should all still be handled. She's there. Peter's family and heirs are living. Nowhere for me to go. So then it's sort of like, well, I guess I just have to go away. But these big money markets entrenched in American music are still making and selling those compilations and selling them in every record store and every other musical sales point on at least 6 continents, not to mention every single way you can sell music online today. Oh, you need to have a good lawyer. So they say. Come on. Is this America? A songwriter is living his or her life gig to gig. He or she is launching into a mainstream marketing and publicity program. Millions of units will be distributed as soon as he signs piles and piles of paper. All of these are his intellectual properties. Well, I'm just trying to be realistic. She or he is going to need some time to really study up and read the written law and read the public policy on every issue in all of those contracts. Live performances, their laws, touring and what's needed, hiring touring teams, making sure, when things change, what do we do? All the laws and requirements, publishing requirements to press vinyl, print compact discs, sell the sounds online on digital platforms, find out all the pros and cons. It's like, oh, that has to be done in the middle of a day or a week where the artist is booked on other shows or has publicity appearances that he has to make, or, his wife is pregnant or her husband, needs her to go and be involved in something happening in the family. And it's like you get to this thing where the artist is trying to understand if they've really even made it to the right person in the company. And if they don't figure it out quickly, that person is gone. So every point where her or his music is gotten to the public, it generates income. Okay, so strip it back to basics. Who is entitled to most of the profit? I don't think it's the investors. I do not. In that process of the artist gaining momentum, they must be protected with adequate support. Those boys and gals in money see the songwriter as an employee. That is the black and white of the issue. Even though the songwriters are the people who wear their hearts on their sleeves, change everything about, their bad mood to bring it into like sunshine, constant sunshine mode, and lift up actually like the entire galaxy. I don't think they're an employee. And for the songwriter, they're the source of the actual product. So think about that. It is terrible, terrible to have something stolen from you. These artists are like putting their lives at risk. So for me, doing this podcast, bringing this information to you, is soothing our universal souls. Let's find peace. Putting a pause to my agitated mind, this is Melanie's Carnegie Hall performance of Brand New Key from Neighborhood Records' first album, Gather Me. Gather Me sold more than 4 million copies under the ownership and management of Melanie. The night that this particular performance is recorded, it's just a fully sold out auditorium. It's beautiful. This is Melanie's live performance of Gather Me's 4th track and Melanie's highest selling song.
I rode my bicycle past your window last night. Oh, yes, I did. I roller skated to your door at daylight. It almost seems like you're avoiding me. I'm okay alone, but you got something I need. Well, I got a brand new pair of roller skates. You got a brand new key. I think that we should get together and try them out, you see. I've been looking around a while. You got something for me. Oh, I got a brand new pair of roller skates. You got a brand new key. I ride my bike, I roller skate, don't drive no car. Don't go too fast, but I go pretty far. For somebody who don't drive, well, I've been all around the world. And some people say I done all right for a girl. Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I asked your mother if you were at home. She said yes, but you weren't alone. Oh, sometimes I think that you're avoiding me. I'm okay alone, but you got something I need. Well, I got a brand new pair of roller skates. You got a brand new key. I think that we should get together and try them out, you see. La 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 la. Oh, I got a brand new pair of roller skates. You got a brand new key.
That bumpin' and fun melody by Melanie. Traveling in time to 1971, we find that international star Melanie and her husband, manager, music producer Peter Shakarik have launched a business endeavor together. It's called Neighborhood Records. They release Brand New Key with Some Say on Side B. It's a Billboard #1 at the end of 1971, beginning of 1972. And here's what is amazing. Neighborhood Records sold more than 4 million copies of that record. This like mom and pop record label in the middle of like the corporate takeover of the music industry. And, you know, there's all sorts of things happening with other musicians and bands, you know, breaking up and being put together through these labels. And Melanie is like, you know, at the Gulf and Western building with like a rolling thing to put wallpaper up that she's ordered specially from Europe. People are like in their suits and ties and their briefcases, and it's all men. It's like the 70s in New York City. She's putting the wallpaper up and they're like, is that a celebrity? Is that Melanie? And she's thinking, they're going to kick me out. I'm putting wallpaper up on these boring businessy office walls. So Melanie mentioned to me that before she opened Neighborhood Records in 1971, the Beatles opened their own record label, Apple Records, in 1968, which was a major advancement. The Beatles opening Apple opened up the music industry to the control of the artists themselves. It probably changed every record company's perspective about the potential competition of the independent artist. Think about that. After the Beatles, no major act had yet made that leap, at least not publicly. Melanie was the next mainstream artist to do so. Now, I'm like an open book. So here's the nitty-naughty, grimy gritty. Remember Paul McCartney's lovely wife, Linda Eastman. Her father was Lee Eastman. Full name, Leopold Eastman, born 12 January 1910, passed away on the 30th of July 1991. Look up his name in Wikipedia, Lee Eastman, and I'm actually reading this from his Wikipedia entry. Lee Eastman was an American show business lawyer and art collector from New York City. Then it reads, Eastman became McCartney's business manager shortly before the breakup of the Beatles, while his son, John Eastman, represented McCartney during this 1970 lawsuit to dissolve the group legally. And then I'm scrolling down to the subheader, manager of McCartney. It reads, Eastman and his son successfully managed McCartney's solo career, leaving McCartney the wealthiest of the former Beatles. In 1984, McCartney cited one example of advice he had received from Eastman. He said, the music publishing I own is fabulous, beautiful. I owe it all to Linda's dad, Lee Eastman, and her brother John. Linda's dad is a great business brain. He said originally, if you are going to invest, do it in something you know. If you invest in building computers or something, you can lose a fortune. Wouldn't you rather be in music? Stay in music. I said, yeah, I'd much rather do that. So he asked me what kind of music I liked, and the first name I said was Buddy Holly. Lee got onto the man who owned Buddy Holly's stuff and bought that for me. So I was into publishing now. And the way McCartney uses the term publishing is an industry term, and it refers to owning the right to publish the works of your own music, but also other artists. And particularly in that time period, the 70s and 80s, and into the 90s, it was the game in the music industry to own, libraries of artists and own their publishing rights. So then back to Wikipedia, McCartney's music publishing investments have paid off. In 1984, he estimated that half his income came from recording and half came from his music publishing business. And so now we're talking about other artists. And back to the article. Well, that's pretty much it. But that's a good explanation, and that's in Wikipedia. It's a relatively short article on Lee Eastman, and I recommend reading it. Lee Eastman's role in the music industry as a show business lawyer had two humongous, dire consequences. The first was that Apple Music, which had inspired so many people, was now without McCartney. The second impact is that a company called Quartet Music came into play in the music world. I learned about Quartet Music in 2020. I hired a private investigator. I couldn't wrap my wits around the wall of percolating diversions from ASCAP in response to why Melanie wasn't receiving millions of dollars in payment against the use of her own recordings. So I hired a private investigator, and the thing is this. At one point, Eastman opened a company called Quartet Music. The documentation provided to me by the private investigator shows that Quartet Music was a royalty collection service for artists. It opened in New York State, February 7th, 1961. Why am I talking about the breakup of the Beatles? I mean, that happened way back on the 10th of April in 1970 when McCartney left, and then the band ended formally on the 29th of December 1974. Well, Quartet Music was owned by Lee Eastman, who eventually got McCartney out of the band, and Quartet Music is the company ASCAP informed Melanie about in 2011, informed her Quartet was receiving her songwriter's copyright payments since 2002. 9 years later, she found out. She didn't know. Neither did Peter. Melanie received notice that her entire library was, quote, acquired by Quartet Music in 2002, nearly 10 years after the fact. And Peter was gone by then, and Quartet Music is literally owned by Lee Eastman. If you're able to follow this, I think you will have to agree with me that this is some shirt no one wants to wear today. This is so bad, it's hard to wrap a towel around your head and tell a tale about what is really going on. The only way I know how to make amends on the soul is to push play on another Melanie song. Her music is wonderful, and this is the very first track performed live at Carnegie Hall, and the name of the song is Little Bit of Me.
To be balanced on the mountain with the people all around who say that I've been up too long and they wanna take me down. I wouldn't mind the coming down. It's the ones who'll come to see if all I got left inside is a little bit of me. Hope I got something left for me. Hope I got something left for me. Hope I got something left for me.
For a few years now, Melanie and I have talked about releasing a 50th anniversary edition of that first Neighborhood Records album, Gather Me. Gather Me 50th would include the album's original 13 tracks exactly as they were released in 1971. It would feature also never before heard music from the archives, all songs and music by Melanie and produced by Peter Szykarek. Melanie had this amazing idea to include a performance that happened right when they released the album, live in New York City. It was a one-woman show on Broadway. Lots of great ideas for Gather Me 50th. And here are some of the conversations with Melanie. I thought you would love to hear this from her.
You know, a song, they just breeze by, you know, and somebody might focus on something, but then, you know, all the other words get lost. Just a girl in trouble. I don't think I'm in danger. No, I know I'm not in danger. I love this. Some have tried to sell me all kinds of things to save me from hurting like a woman and crying like a baby. Yeah, I went to Escondido and checked into the Hidden Valley Health Ranch, and you know, you get booked a consultation with Dr. Bernard Jensen, and I went in his office, and he recommended that I go on a fast and get colonics, and you know, because I told him I was a vegetarian, but it was like not doing well. You know, I kept getting sick, and all the time I was sick. And he asked me what blood type I guess he found out what blood type I was. Anyway, so he said, thought that I should eat meat after all was said and done. I couldn't believe it. I mean, he himself was vegetarian, but he said, you know, I am a type A or something, and you're a type O. You're the original meat eater, he said. And it's very much harder for O blood types to be vegetarians. go ahead, and don't eat meat. But it was really unbelievable. As I kept fasting, every little thing was becoming so emotional. Everything. I'm sitting there watching a Marcus Welby television show. Do you remember that? Robert Young played a doctor, like a small-time town, worrying about them and following up and all this stuff. What you think a doctor should be. But I was in my room, and I'm in the middle of my fast, and Marcus Welby was on, and I put it on, and I'm watching, and I'm sobbing. I was absolutely sobbing over a Marcus Welby episode, and I thought, there's something wrong. It can't be that sad. He thought it was about time I stopped the fast. 27 days. That was extra long.
That was extra
long.
And
he kept saying, I think maybe you should break the fast tomorrow. And I think, no, I just think I'm almost there, I'm just going to, I think another few days. And I kept saying this, And when the 27th day happened, he said, I think it's time. And the next thing I was at a flea market, and the next thing I was at a McDonald's, and wrote Brand New Cape. No, it was really bizarre.
My favorite song is Baby Day. And
that was at the Health French.
And so were you there and you
Yes.
had like a pen and you were writing?
No, I just had it in my head. I remembered my songs mostly. Sometimes I'd, have a paper and I'd write down something, but mostly, like Baby Day, I was on a rock and I was watching the sunrise.
Wow.
And this is the secret of happiness right here. Right here, sitting on this rock, watching the valley, the dark valley. All of a sudden the sun is coming up. There were these moments of epiphany, like I'm living a frivolous life. I've been celebrating, and I've been drinking, and I've been carrying on. And I think I want to get back to the earth. Still feel hungry. God, I want to give and ring the living bell.
That's cool.
A living bell. It was like, I am the living bell, I'm singing, I'm a bell.
Wow.
Railroad is its own song. What is it? Railroad, where are you going to take me now? I've been singing the low notes. I want to get up, but the low notes bring me down. Low notes bring me down.
Someday I'll be a farmer. Do you remember when you wrote that?
Well, probably around that same time with the whole idea of, being with the land and, waking up in the morning and growing your own vegetables.
Well, the line that always really grabs me from Someday I'll Be a Farmer is, I've been looking all around, looking everywhere to build and climb a mountain if it isn't there.
Success, Here I'm, what else could a person want? I built this incredible thing, and what is it? It's really not there. Wow, even after you become famous and people love you and everything, and I'm looking around and there's nothing there.
So Little Bit of Me, was that, does that
It's the
go
same.
with?
It's the same motivation,
Really?
It's like,
Yeah.
only someday I'll be a farmer was a lot more hopeful. Like, yeah, maybe I will buy a farm and we'll have cows and goats and sheep, and that's the answer.
Well, this makes me laugh so much because so many of my friends have said that, and I've thought that myself too, having grown up on a blueberry farm. Like,
Right.
wouldn't it just be great to be back on a farm? Why not be a farmer?
Right.
Why not?
Why not? That's what I thought. That's what and Peter would look at me like,
Oh, you would say that too, Peter.
yeah, we'll look at a farm. You know, I mean, that was like the very last thing in this universe he wanted,
Right.
was to grow up, you know, open the door and to the cows.
Right.
You know, he had grown up on farms, you know, so he.
The big city.
Are you crazy? You know?
Right.
But
That's hysterical. So would you actually think, like, I just need to, like, get away from all this and
yeah, I mean,
I'm going to be a farmer?
I'm gonna be a farmer.
Oh.
That song was used in a BBC special about animal husbandry and stuff.
Right.
You know, it's like a real farm show.
Right.
About, and then the cows had to do this because of that, and they used my songs. And day I'll be a farmer, and then, and also this, the melody is so. It isn't fair, bum ba-dum, you know. Ooh, ooh, ooh. It's like it's so contradictory to the words, really. You know, I mean, but I like that. I always loved that kind of absurdity. Balanced on a Mountain, Little Bit of Me was a lot more moody, but it was the same sort of thing. You know, here I am, and that sort of tends to make you want to be less, so you're not hurting people.
Right.
You know, well, really, you know, if oh no, I'm just really ugly and my skin breaks out, and
Right.
I like,
Right.
and you know, I wasn't flaunting anything for
Right.
sure. I was the opposite. I was the anti-flaunt,
Wow.
anti-flaunter.
Neighborhood Records, Melanie's music production company. Peter secured everything needed to open it. The very year Melanie was able to legally retire her contracts with her previous record label. That was 1971, and sitting in the studio with Peter again in the sound room, it was the first time they had worked without interference. Had a little bit of a question for Melanie. I asked her, did she write Gather Me as a theme album? Was it like so clearly defined, this is what I'm doing, like I am now done with Buddha and now here's Neighborhood Records and we have an office and now I need to write an album?
No, I had songs.
Okay.
I had so many songs. I mean, it's not like I went, you know, with 10 songs to record an album. I mean, I never even understood the concept. I just always wrote so much. I always had more songs than could fit on an album. So it was, you know, I'd record this, I'd record that, and it wasn't like we were doing a theme album. We never really went out to do that. You know, we never went out to do, let's write about the sea. This will be all about the sea, or interpersonal relationships, or, you know, any specific category. In fact, I just liked, you know, just doing different kinds of songs, one after another, you know, just happy song, sad song, you know, funny song, quirky song, and then moody. But, you know, the idea of writing an album, I never did that. I never did that. I thought about how nice that might be, but I never did that.
Interesting.
I'm going to talk about being a woman. This is all about womanhood. I'm going to be womanizing womanhood. This will be all about women and relationship between women and working, and women and households, and women, and find all the songs about women, and then the album would be called Woman. And we put that out, and it's nice and neat. All the woman songs are together. But no, I never did that. I think it's just, for me, it's I don't know, something, unless you're doing a play, actual theater presentation, there's no need to do that. Just let people hear songs. Songs. Album is a collection of songs. If you want a theatrical presentation, then that's something else. Then I can write a song about a particular moment in this that needs to have the development of a song, because the song is what takes the mundane of what happened, because no matter what it is, it's just what happened. And then the part that music does is it makes it an epic, because it takes it from I walked down the street and I fell in love to the person's life is now going to change, and you are going to come along with us and see how big that is, and that's what music does. It just makes it bigger. But because that's why musicals exist, there's a place where there's no more words, you just have to sing. So that's a good thing to have a theme. But for albums, I don't, you should do an album about this. I mean, I've heard people saying that constantly to me.
Such history. Very historic. I love it so much. An incredibly talented performer, a woman writes her lyrics, her melodies. Her husband is so devoted to her. Recording her in the studio, together they release a 100% done product on their own record label, and it sells 4 million copies in its first few years. And the 27th human right protects the moral and material interests of an artistic creator. In today's industry, with misleading statements, the successful American songwriters have had their basic human rights trampled on. People say it's gotten better in the music industry, like all the bad actors just went away. No, they didn't. They did not. The abuse is real in these people's lives day by day. That is the situation. That's what Melanie faces. And it is scary. It has gotten better. However, a tremendous amount of one-sided agreements still are in place, with unfair pressure brought to bear still today. There are still today lots of conversations about why the law should not resolve this. I think the law should be in favor of the songwriter, the musician, and the performer. In the celebrity timeshare, there is often no time, because everywhere you go, people know you, and you need time to prepare your craft, present it, refine it, maybe collaborate. I mean, when you hit that big time, it's so much work, constant observation, people constantly, fans, yes, but also people who want to collaborate, asking about a marketing strategy, throwing a book deal out there, husbands and wives and children and family, and there's only bitterness if you break someone's heart. So I think there should be a lot more precautions really in favor of the artist, and a lot of loopholes to escape something that trumps on an individual's human rights. And maybe that will leave us in the industry only people who are truly dedicated to the craft of music and the heights it brings us all. I mean, why does it have to be so money motivated? So obviously one-sided to the private interests of big companies and big investors. This is where music went out of control of the artists themselves, and it's time for us, the fans, the music lovers, to help them get it back. It's the conclusion to this episode of the Music on the Open Road podcast, Neighborhood Records. For the most up-to-date news and music from Melanie, connect with her directly via her website, melaniesafka.com, or find her on Patreon, listed under Melanie Safka. also on social media. She is listed under both Melanie and Melanie Safka on Facebook. Credits for today's episode are, first up, me, Corinne Sullivan. I researched and conducted the interviews with Melanie and wrote and edited and produced the music on the Open Road podcast. Today's episode, Neighborhood Records, is recorded here in Willamina, Oregon, 15 May 2023. Big love to Melanie for use of her music and for contributing to this podcast through our interview sessions, which we conducted between 2019 and 2022. Music interludes at the beginning portion of today's podcast are taken from the original piece, Fantasia on a Theme Called Beebs. The piece is composed by both Spencer J. Sullivan in 2019 at my brother's home in Beaverton, Oregon, and by Bo Jared Shakaric in 2022 at his home in Nashville. And thank you to my older brother, Kelsey Sullivan, who enabled Spencer. Spencer's piece Beebs was expanded upon by the genius mind of Bo Jared, Melanie's only son and a concert guitarist, as well as a noted composer. The recordings of Melanie's music are from an outlandishly, devilishly exposed collection of rare Melanie masterpieces that had been tucked safely in a garage by Peter Shakaric. How they are appearing on the Music on the Open Road podcast is shared in episode 5, entitled Article 27 Music, and episode 6 of season 1, entitled A Man Called Shakaric. To fully conclude the Neighborhood Records episode, I'll give the mic to Melanie on stage in 1971, pretty much the same week as her first album from her record label, Neighborhood Records, hit the sales rack. It's a sold-out show. It's Broadway, New York City. They've already added an additional evening to accommodate the fans who responded through ticket sales. So here's Melanie, live and alone with her guitar on stage, on Broadway at the DeMille Theater, performing from the Gather Me collection, Someday I'll Be a Farmer.
Someday I'll be a farmer, working the land. I wish I was a farmer to work with my hands, 'cause it's been too long a ride, too high the fare. You know, I built and climbed a mountain, but it wasn't there. And I've been looking all around, looked everywhere. Well, I built and climbed a mountain, but it wasn't there. It isn't there. Dum-da-dum. It isn't here, it isn't there, nor anywhere. I'm gonna pick an apple right from the tree. I'm gonna eat the apple 'cause it grew there for me. And it's been too long a ride, too high the fare. You know, I built and climbed this mountain, but it wasn't even there. And I've been looking all around, looked everywhere, to build and climb a mountain if it isn't there. And it's been too long a ride, too high the fare, to build and climb a mountain if it isn't there. It isn't there. Dum-da-dum. It isn't here, it isn't there, nor anywhere. Someday I'll be a farmer, working the land. I wish I was a farmer to work with my hands, 'cause it's been too long a ride, too high the fare. Well, I built and climbed a mountain, but it wasn't there. And I've been looking all around, looked everywhere, to build and climb a mountain if it isn't even there. And it's been too long a ride, too high the fare, to build and climb a mountain if it isn't there. And it's been too long a ride, too high the fare, to build and climb a mountain if it isn't there. And it's been too long a ride, too high the fare, to build and climb a mountain if it isn't there. It isn't there. Dum-da-dum, it isn't there, wish I was a farmer, working the land. Someday I'll be a farmer to work with my hands. Bum, ba, dum, bum, dum, 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 dum.